All right. Well, thank you, Alex. And thank you all for joining us today. We're really excited to be here at the end of 2021. It's been a wild ride for, I think, everyone this year. And we're going to continue to be on this roller coaster together as we go up and down to see where the world goes. But one place where I feel like we're going up is in collaboration, specifically in the built environment, specifically when it comes to materials. And Mindful Materials, AIA and ZGF Architects are here to talk about collaboration, expansion of action, and sort of where we've come from and where we're going together in the future. And so I do want to welcome Lana Rarick, who's an associate principal with ZGF Architects, one of the co-writers of the original AIA Materials pledge, and I would say secret ninja legend when it comes to materials action. She's on numerous boards and an immense force to making the change that we all want to see in the built environment, specifically surrounding materials. And then we have Matt Welker, who's a new friend of mine, who is the Senior Director of Sustainability and Knowledge and Practice Operations and Strategy at AIA. And he has taken over and is leading internal efforts to expand the reach of the AIA Materials Pledge, among other items within AIA and to their members at large. So Matt and Lana, thank you so much for being here and welcome. Excited to hear from you in a little bit as well. So we're here today to talk about collaboration. We're here today to talk about industry updates, and we're here today to talk about where and how we can make progress together as a community, addressing the impacts of the built environment, and what resources, what commitments can we all make so that we can see change happen further, faster, together. And so we are at Mindful Materials, just wanted to give a little overview of sort of where we are and where we're going, reflecting on 2021 briefly, but really talking about the future, because the future is bright, I think, for all of us. To join together under a common platform, a common language to drive change. But we talk about this often. This is the scare tactic of the built environment, but it's not just a scare tactic, it's a reality. The just endless words of concern of the sheer impact of the built environment on humanity, on our earth, on the spaces that we exist in all the time. And so there is a need for all of us to acknowledge the choices that we make with products impacts the world greatly and your fellow human beings. And it is a little, perhaps thought process of that is a little dramatic maybe to think, oh, this materials decision, this specification has such an impact, but the true reality of it is that the quantifications and the science indicate that these decisions that we make every day, all the time, within these seats that we sit in, either manufacturing these products, specifying these products, buying these products, using these products, has a major impact on the world and the people that live on this earth. And so Mindful Materials has been around for some time, and we've been doing a lot of work over 2021 to really expand our vision. What is it that we are trying to achieve at the organization of Mindful Materials? And as a community, a mindful materials community. And I think that's one of the best things about Mindful Materials. It's been volunteered, owned, and led since its inception. And we are going to be transitioning to a 501c3 nonprofit within the next week. And really excited to offer this as a charitable give to the market with a vision, in which case we are seeking to enable a world where mindful materials are clear to identify, easy to find, and the standard on every building, so that we systematically reduce the impact of the built environment together. And so you might have known of Mindful Materials as a label scheme. This came out thanks to Nancy Halsey and HKS many years ago. I remember being in the Shaw showroom at Neocon, probably 2016, when the first label came out to the marketplace. And it was so exciting because this provided succinct sustainability information in one place, so you could see the check marks that a manufacturer had that was meant to go on the back of a product binder. That label has evolved, that sustainability information has evolved to be the labels that they are today. The labeling process is still very exciting and very important, but what we realize is those labels go out of date almost immediately as they were published. And so there's a need to constantly refresh this information and your physical materials library often. So we digitized the library, and we have a sustainable materials library that takes the sustainability data of all these different manufacturers across all these different divisions and synthesizes it so it's quicker, easier to find sustainability information across building product manufacturers. But a library can only do so much. And I think the sheer power of mindful materials is actually in the movement that we are creating together. This is an embarrassing slide. And Alex, we do need to change this slide because it is not just about Alex and I. In this is just a Building Green article about the new direction that we're taking. We are here to build a community. We are here to bring everyone in the built environment together to make change and enable different decisions to be made. So that we can effectively reduce the impact of the built environment together. So we're going from a label to a library and now enabling a movement of change makers now and into the future. And how we're planning to do that is through 3 different ways. Building a collaboration hub, a cross-industry collaboration hub that is going to be creating a common materials framework that is going to power a curated and connected digital materials library. And so what the heck does it mean to have a collaboration hub? Well, we are seeking to sort of be this magnet of all the people, all the education, all the knowledge, all the standards that have been out there when it comes to materials. This is a vast mystery to the majority of the world. What is all this stuff? How do we make sense of this? Why is there no easy dictionary to understand what are all the acronyms that we commonly talk about all day, every day together? So how can we bring the people? How can we bring the knowledge? How can we bring the passion? How can we bring the information all under one roof so it's synthesized, easier to understand, and we feel like we can come together as a community and make change together? So we're building this hub, this place, this swimming pool of warm water that everybody can jump into and feel good about making change together. And we're focused in 3 ways now and in 2021 on education, advocacy, and awareness when it comes to different materials decisions within the marketplace. So we're going to be focusing on creating education content in a neutral space with industry experts gathered around to talk about what is the materials market and how can you advance your practice? How can you advance your manufacturing? How can you advance your decision-making to keep sustainability in mind and at the forefront when specifying, purchasing, manufacturing products into the future. So we will be creating programs like a certificate program that will offer a 4-hour just down and dirty information on how what is this materials market and how can you integrate it into the design practice, but also for sales reps so that they can understand the sustainability materials market a lot easier and be able to communicate up and down the value chain. This is what I need. Here's the answer to what you need and how I can help you achieve your sustainable project goals. We're also going to be focusing on advocacy and awareness. We're going to be hosting numerous events in 2022. Pop-up events. We just had our first one in Philadelphia. We had over 60 people join us from the local Philly market to talk about sustainable materials. 16 plus manufacturers had a Hayworth desk that they were able to show and talk about their sustainable products and why they're mindful to a room full of interior designers and architects. And we got to hear from Ewing Cole in their practice of integrating climate health and social health and equity into their daily design projects. It was really wonderful to combine both product information as well as knowledge to really see the community come together and start to build awareness of the change that we are making together. We're going to have 4 of these events, 4 to 5 in 2022, and really excited to start to regionalize and get back in person. It was a breath of fresh air with masks on to be able to talk and bump shoulders and have some great conversations over a glass of wine with people we haven't seen forever. And then we're going to be building awareness. So we're going to be expanding our global hub presence. This is not just a North American initiative. We are seeking to create partners on a global basis so that every region around the world has a means to think about sustainable materials, think about sustainable decisions, where they are, and then start to advance that network based on where they are now to where they should be in terms of sustainability in the future. We're going to have lunch and learns. We're going to have webinars. We're going to have fireside chats that are actually probably going to take place in front of somebody's personal fireplace that will be moderated, talking about case studies of successful projects that integrated sustainable materials decision-making and action with manufacturers, architects, designers, and owners all coming together to talk about those projects. So we're really excited to really invest in this work in 2022, and a lot of great things coming out of the mindful materials to prepare for in the future. I didn't mention, Matt and I have been talking about doing some combined education too, how AIA and mindful materials can come together to really advance practice within the community as well. So looking forward to continuing to figure out how to best collaborate with all of our association friends, especially AIA in 2022 as well. And so if we were to describe ourselves of where we want to focus and what we want to become, or what we are is the UN of sustainable materials. So how can we synthesize, take all this information in under one roof, make it easier to talk about, make it easier to understand, make it easier to make decisions, but then also promote all other businesses within this space so that we are essentially enabling, if sustainable products are sought after, how can we float the boats of everyone, in which case the service providers, the certification providers, the other tools in the industry, how can we enable the entire industry to grow through the evolution of the action that mindful materials is trying to show. So we're really excited to take on this role in the marketplace in 2022. And we're the host of the combination of all of these materials pledges. And I know Matt and Lana these are the stars of the show here. I just wanted to give an overview of where we are, but we're taking in and addressing the letters across the ecosystem. So we have an owner's commitment, we have a lighting advocacy letter, we have the AI Materials pledge, we have the interior design pledge, we have a MEP commitment, we have a manufacturer's commitment, we have a structural engineer commitment. We have commitments at every sector of the value chain within the built environment. All of these groups, all of these letters are saying and committing to thinking about products that address climate health, human health, ecosystem health, social health, and equity in the circular economy. So how can they find, make, specify, buy products that are starting to reduce their impacts across these 5 categories? It was very beautiful what AIA invented, and it's so great to see the ecosystem adopting the same framework so we can all start to talk in the same language about materials together. But we're coming from a place of what the heck does it mean to address human health? What does it mean to address climate health, social health, et cetera? And Mindful Materials in our community and our collaboration hub has brought the industry experts together to create the industry's first common materials framework. So we're taking all the knowledge, all the eco labels, all the standards that have been created so far across those 5 categories and really defining what does it mean for a product to address these things, and how can an architect and designer actually ask for the same things under and using the 5-bucket framework. I think it's going to be a lot easier for architects and designers across the world and owners to say, I want to find products that address human health, climate health, and social health and equity, instead of I want to find products that have 100 parts per million level, no CMRs, PBTs, have reduced their CO2 equivalency by 1,000 kilograms of CO2 equivalent, and have a diversity, equity, and inclusion program. That's a lot, and most people don't understand what most of those things are. So how can we bring the language and create a language that everyone can ask the same thing and the give can be the same thing at a level that everyone can understand and talk about? And that's what we're here to do, to create in collaboration with our partners across the industry. So those that have led the initiation of those letter commitments have joined us as a part of a content advisory board to create this common materials framework. And what we're doing is defining these buckets of sustainability, handing that off to a much larger sector of the industry and the content working group who's providing oversight and commentary to the development of the common materials framework from the CAB, and then sending that back to the CAB for finalization and updates. And if we were to break out what the common materials framework looks like, here is the 5 buckets, but we're actually thinking about this in terms of level 2 buckets. And then finally, across those level 2 buckets, how does a product address transparency, assessment, commitments, and optimization, the acronym of TACO, across all these level 2 buckets? And if we hone in on human health, we're breaking human health down into substances, VOCs, and company-wide human health impact. So then what we do is we say, what are all the eco labels? What are all the standards out there within substances that address transparency, that address assessment, that address commitments, that address optimization? And how that breaks out is, if you look at this transparency bucket, I'm sorry, this is very small, but we're really quantifying the data and science behind it so that it can essentially roll up into this really common standard language. So if you look at transparency, we're looking at reporting bodies, format, percent disclosed, reporting threshold, the amount of CASRNs that are disclosed, and is it third-party verified or not? This is all work in progress, but I just wanted to show that the amount of science and data that we're synthesizing behind the common materials framework so that it can essentially roll up into a common language that everyone can talk about. So know that the work is being done on the back end so that the industry can talk in a much easier way. And I'm going to speed up a little bit. Ultimately, this is going to be synthesized in a curated and connected digital materials library. Mindful Materials is already a bouncer to a club called SUSTI in some way, where you have to meet a baseline criteria of what the industry has defined as a mindful material and even to enter. So this is already a curated list of product sustainability data that exists today. But ultimately what we're going to be able to do is filter the library to the common materials framework. So if a firm cares about human health, climate health, and social health and equity, they actually can filter all the products and companies that address those three categories, and they will filter to the top. To ultimately create this really cool ecosystem of data management, all of this information brought into this centralized filter tool that is the common materials framework to be sent out to where products are currently being found and specified and sampled and purchased. And so we are not going to be a workflow tool. We don't want an extra step for anyone. We want to bring this data in, synthesize it, and send that data out so decisions can be made where decisions are being made now. And so in terms of a timeline of all of this work, and it's an immense amount of work with a lot of people, and Lana and Matt are integral parts of the development of this common framework. But we're looking to finalize this framework by end of January, early February 2022. Those that have created those materials pledges have the opportunity to adopt the common materials framework as a means to show contribution to your firm committing and meeting the pledge commitments. And then we're going to update the library to this filter system and enable those API connections by 2023. And so with that, I'd love to hand it over to Matt, who has a really great insight as to how the AIA is looking at materials in practice and supporting the industry in setting metrics on what does it mean to meet the materials pledge. And Lana's going to be talking about this a little bit too, but I'd love to hand it off to Matt to share his perspective from AIA and how all of this work kind of fits together from his perspective as well. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Annie. Hopefully we can see my screen. Always the challenge in the Zoom environment. We should be more adept at it at this point than we are, or I am anyway. But my name is Matt Welker. I'm one of the AI staff members working on the Architecture and Design Materials Pledge, which is what we call, was often the AI Materials Pledge or just Materials Pledge. The whole encompassing name, though, Architecture and Design Materials Pledge. And I'm excited to tell you a little bit about the purpose of the pledge. Lana will get more into sort of how some of it comes together, to recap a couple of the collaborations and opportunities and enthusiasm we have about the work Mindful Materials has been doing, and to share some top line data from a recent survey of program participants to get a sense of sort of where they are in industry, why they're picking up the program, how they're moving forward, and what some roadblocks are. So architects and designers, as you heard from Annie, absolutely have the greatest ability to influence and determine the products that are going into buildings. And in doing so, they make really substantial impact on climate, on health, on social issues. It's really critical to providing buildings and communities where all people can thrive. And so alongside Mindful Materials and others with Lana and other member architects, we've been collaborating with building product manufacturers for well over a decade to improve sustainable materials and to clarify the ask. And we've absolutely made progress. I think it's important in this journey to acknowledge that. And when we think about even where like AIA was 5 years ago, when we first started really seriously looking at what constitutes a sustainable material versus where we are today, there's a huge amount of growth. And I think it's important to acknowledge that and the entire ecosystem that has made that possible. But we also know that we need greater clarity and specific definition around what constitutes that sustainable material. And I think that's so much of what you heard in Annie's work. And it's why we've been so enthusiastic about helping to connect that work with our members and the 5 pledge statements. That is, of course, also the motivation behind the Architecture and Design Materials Pledge. It's driven by a desire on the part of AIA, on our members, to clarify architect and designers' asks to building product manufacturers, to really hone in on that. And inspired by the program is by our 2030 commitment, which exists to build accountability around ambitious imperatives. And so the ambitious imperatives in this case are the 5 pledge statements you see on the screen here. Annie previewed them, Lana will get into them. The icons and the colors are going to change, but it's human health, climate health, ecosystem health, social health, and equity within a circular economy. And when you think about that, that's really, it's the triple bottom line, right? It's people, planet, prosperity. It's not earth shattering, but these pledge statements have been really carefully refined and crafted to lay a groundwork so we can do the scientific analysis that says, what does this mean, and have a holistic framework. So to that end, over the past 6 months, we've been really excited about emerging partnerships and collaborations with Mindful Materials and others. Lana's definitely going to get into some more about how this is manifesting in ZGF and then the other pledge statements, which is exciting. But we see the work around the common materials framework is really critical in the pathway to providing the clarity and consensus around what is a sustainable material in really simple terms that makes this accessible. We know it's a complex landscape. And so much of AIA's work over the last 5 years has been trying to make it just a little bit more accessible. And it's great to see how that's turbocharging with Mindful Materials. And hopefully with some of those collaborations that Annie previewed that we're trying to make work in terms of education. So where we are now, since 2018, and we first published the statements in an open letter in industry, more than 130 architecture and design firms have joined. We think this is all, but it seems to grow every couple of days. And we have really large international firms, and we also have really small firms, right? So much of this right now is a values commitment. And so last month, I think it was last month at this point, we checked in with all of the firms who have signed on. We sent a survey around and we said, help us understand why you joined, how you're applying the pledge in practice, what does this mean in really practical terms, and what resources do you need moving forward to really catalyze the journey? And we had pretty good response. About a third of firms participated, 48. You can see a breakdown here by size, but also the chart on the right is how they scored their inherent culture of sustainability within their practice. And it's a little bit unsurprising, I think, to us, and Lana and I talked a little bit about this a few weeks ago, that almost everybody who responded indicated that on a scale 1 to 5, there's a sense of an inherent culture of sustainability, right? These are folks who already get it, whether it's emerging or it's a really strong culture, they're predisposed to that work. And so it makes sense, and it's probably many of the folks on this call, that one of the primary motivators why people are joining the pledge, why they're saying let's commit to the industry action, are intrinsic or values-based motivations. So we see 72% selecting that it's just because it's the right thing to do, right? It's not like we're going to be ambivalent about why we're doing it. It's just the right thing to do. And that's a moral stance that aligns with our ethical obligations. You see an even larger share saying that it's around a commitment to holistic product specification. Again, we just need to do this as part of who we are. But the data also suggests the existence of the program, the work we're engaging with Mindful Materials, that roadmap that Annie just laid out, really appeals to firms who are seeking breakthroughs on their sustainability journeys. And I think that's why these common definitions become so important. 66% of respondents were motivated by how the pledge will help transform their culture. That's also a huge thing we've seen in 2030 commitment, which I also manage. And 40% are looking forward to accessing new tools and resources. So again, that roadmap that Annie talked through, opportunities for collaboration, really critical. So like any organizational commitment, signing onto the pledge seems to be opening doors for additional conversations around staff and the importance of materials in achieving sustainability goals. And I think that's really promising, even in the absence of those really clear definitions about what constitutes a sustainable material. 90% of folks who joined the pledge since joining have delivered training to their staff on materials and are changing the way they're talking about it. And not just abstractly, 60% are reporting that they're having pledge specific conversations within their project teams. That's an opportunity to really transform that work. And I think it is a testament, right, to how enthusiastic people are in the marketplace. Certainly we are. And I think it makes it easy to be excited about the work. What we're seeing lower adoption on initially, which is totally fine, I think to be expected, are some of those more difficult tasks, updating the materials library, having that conversation with your client, updating your sustainability plan, and Ilana's going to preview that a little bit, I think, about how ZGF approaches it, which is so helpful and insightful. We expect that number to go up. That's probably a function of time as well as knowledge. So here, and I know I'm going fast, I think we're going to have a recording of this available. I've shared my slides with the Mindful Materials team. You can see that 40% of respondents have already adopted a system to organize their library. We think of this as like a good step, right? It's spelling out a process. It's documenting what you're going to do. It's really drawing that line in the sand. And that's important for organizational change. So kudos to those 40%. We asked them what tools they're using, and we'll be digging more into that. But at the top of the pile pretty consistently are Mindful Materials, but we also saw internal spreadsheets, which creates industry lumpiness, as well as references to dedicated staff and consultants and how you train that ecosystem. So there's a lot to sort of dig into there. But really excitingly, we're seeing 46% of respondents saying we haven't yet implemented a system to organize our libraries, but we are prepared to do so. And again, I think that's where the common materials framework becomes really value add for folks in the pledge, and looking forward to adding clarity over the next couple of months. This chart briefly is showing where firms are on their implementation journey. We left this a little bit open-ended. There's some qualitative data behind it too, but we asked folks to indicate to what degree they've taken steps to implement the pledge to the best of their knowledge, to their understanding, right? There's a lot of wiggle here, absent the common materials framework. But you do see that about half of respondents indicate some level of prioritization around health, which makes sense, or implementation around health, that makes sense. It is by and large the most highly prioritized of the 5 pledge statements, but conversely, you see only about 5% of firms currently implementing work around circular economy. And that includes just setting a goal for yourself. Just saying like, this is something we're going to do is just like a part of our process of specifying journeys. Only 5% are there right now, which maybe makes sense. It's the least prioritized of the 5 statements pretty consistently. This is my last slide. And it's noting sort of this question of what do signatories, the people who have signed on, the folks who are doing this work, need to go to the next level, whatever that means for them. And I think this really nicely aligns with Annie's slides around what Mindful Materials is laying out to do in 2022, certainly aligns with where AIA is making investments, but 87% are looking for more manufacturer data, more transparency about what's out there, being able to access it readily. 65% are saying they want additional educational resources. Very often that looks like within their firm, but sometimes it's building capacity to understand. And sometimes it's, where to find that education, right? Sometimes that's it, or how to use a new tool. And then 70% of respondents are seeking consistent goals and benchmarks. What are the thresholds that we're working toward? And again, I think that's where the work of Mindful Materials, the partnerships and collaborations we're exploring, the connections that we have with Lana and other members who are closely integrated in the work are adding value and going to help move folks who are joining the pledge as well as the industry at large move forward and make really substantial differences toward these goals in the next couple of years. I'm going to pass it to Lana, but note that we do have a variety of resources on materials at aia.org/materials. We have a team at materials@ai.org. I'm so glad to answer questions about the pledge and how we're thinking about it and where there's some great resources. Lana?
Thank you. I'm going to get my screen shared. And it wants to do the presenter view. All right, are you guys seeing it now?
Yep.
Okay, good. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about where ZGF is with the materials pledge and some of the work that we're doing with Mindful Materials to take it even farther. So this is one of the proudest things that I've ever been part of is this creation of this A&D materials pledge and really defining what does it mean to be a holistically sustainable material. and it's really exciting to see the growth. My slide is a little bit older than Matt's, and I'm just amazed every time I look at it to just see the reach and the impact it's already having on the building products industry at large. But it could go a lot farther. The implementation, we always knew the implementation of it was going to be the hard part. And I think, you know, it really is going to take this common materials framework to get to the real implementation. But, you know, at ZGF, we couldn't wait for that to get started. And so in anticipation of there being some metrics that everyone's agreeing on that are saying, okay, this means I'm supporting human health, this means I'm supporting climate health, that we just wanted to get started and start doing the work and trying some things out, trying and failing a little bit. So this slide is actually a slide from we call the ZGF Materials Playbook. It's an internal resource right now, but hopefully we'll have a public version soon to share with everyone, because I think that is part of the work as well, is just sharing our resources and sharing our knowledge with the community at large. So we created these 5 icons that apply to each of the 5 areas of materials pledge. I bring that up because you'll see these icons throughout my 15 slides here today. And this is a way we help people within ZGF navigate the materials playbook, which I have to admit is well over 100 pages and growing as we speak. So these icons kind of help you figure out which pieces apply to which parts of the materials pledge. So what does it mean to support human health? And we have everything from like, what does that mean within LEED and WELL to what does that mean when you're actually choosing products and looking at certifications? And that's the piece I'm going to talk about just a little bit today. But before I talk about that, I just wanted to talk about this, you know, this just gratifying growth within the industry. There's just a groundswell of commitment to choosing better materials, and this recognition that the materials that we're putting into our buildings have real impact outside of our buildings. And I think, you know, when I came into this work, we were mostly talking about human health, but when we talked about human health, we were talking about the people that were going to be inside those buildings. We weren't talking about the health of the people near the factories where those products were being created. We weren't talking about the health of the ecosystem. So it's really great to see some coalescence around these ideas. This interior design pledge, which I understand is an individual person pledge that you can sign up through Metropolis, and the path is at the bottom of this slide. It has 3 areas, 3 buckets, but I think they pretty much align with the 5 buckets of the materials pledge. So this is my attempt to align those. They talk about design for health being both human and ecological health, obviously design for climate. It has a lot of pieces about circularity in it, and design for equity. So great new pledge out in the market. The contractors are coming on board. All of us that are in the trenches in architecture and design understand how important this is, that we have allies on the contractor side that are actively working to get better products into their buildings. I do a lot of work trying to write things into the specifications so that you cannot substitute out a less sustainable material, but there's limits to what I can write in. And then there's some realities of the project. Sometimes it just makes a huge difference when the contractor is a partner in this work. And this is one of the most exciting things recently as well. The manufacturers had a new letter that came out earlier this year that directly aligns with the 5 buckets of the materials pledge and says, we hear you. We're going to work on all 5 areas of this materials pledge. And it's a really well-written letter, and I expect to hope everyone goes and checks it out. You can see it on Mindful Materials website. All these commitments have links on the website. And they've already got over 50 manufacturers. This slide is probably out of date as well. Should probably get Annie and Alex to give me a new graphic here as well, but well over 50 manufacturers are already committed to looking at holistically sustainable materials. And I was really excited when I saw this slide too, because I saw a lot of familiar names, but I also saw some new names that I had never seen kind of in this space of really pursuing sustainable materials before. So it's really just great to see that the way that this is spreading throughout the industry. So looking at how we're dealing with this at ZGF, we have these 5 areas of the materials pledge. We want to support human health, climate health, social health and equity, ecosystem health within a circular economy. So how do we do that? We have to think about, kind of the big picture first. Of how we do that. And of course, I have my picture like right over my slides, so I can't look at it. So there's these 4 big elements to what we're doing now. I think this will evolve and change as as the cultural change within ZGF and the cultural change in the design industry at large takes root a little bit more. But these are the pieces that we saw as really important for right now. Ask for transparency. Ask. We want your EPDs, we want your HPDs, we want clear to cradle, we want declare, we want it all. There are lots of places where there's lots of information, and then there are whole divisions of product types that have almost no information or no information at all. So we just keep needing to fill in those gaps. Looking at what's out there right now, what goals and metrics can we set for ourselves? So how do we know we're doing well? It's a hard question because we weren't always keeping track of all the products that actually made it into our buildings. We're still not keeping great track of it, but we're working on it. Updating and creating tools, bringing your specifications, creating tools so you can keep track of which products that you're specifying hit which benchmarks, and hopefully keep track of which ones actually made it into the building. And of course, education is still key. There's a certain level of understanding around human health, and climate health has a lot of momentum right now. But we've been doing a push on social health and equity within our firm this year, because I got to admit, like a few years ago, when we were working on the materials pledge, that was a piece that we all knew was really important. And we didn't really understand the boundaries of what it meant to have social health and equity in your building materials. We didn't understand. I personally did not understand that if you went far enough down the global supply chain on most products, you probably will find child labor or modern slavery in that product somewhere down in some of the base ingredients going into that product. It's just a shocking factoid that was shared with me when we were doing some of the research for the materials pledge. And it just rang true at the same time. So we're still educating ourselves, probably be educating ourselves for a long, long time. So I was actually against this idea of the ZGF green dot at first, because I really believe in the work of mindful materials. I really believe in the work of collaboration, and the industry should come together and define this criteria for the whole industry. But on the other hand, we couldn't really wait. And I saw that this was a great way to start to get our heads around, like, what do we mean by each of these areas in the materials pledge? Giving it a little, it gets us warmed up, gets the manufacturers warmed up for what the asks might be. And it's honestly another part of that education. It's another piece where people are, within ZGF can say, oh, I see this got, climate health green dot. What does that mean? So it gives us a way to start talking about what that means. And maybe some of the criteria here is missing something, and gives us an opportunity for those conversations. So this is where we started with our green dot criteria, the human health category. And what we were doing was just looking out at the industry and like, what already exists? What can we lift up? What are as Annie is saying, what are all those boats that are doing good work out in the industry that already are reflecting something about pursuing safer materials? So that was the whole point of the human health green dot criteria, was just to look at what's out there already and leverage that. And this is a very, I think this one's going to change a lot. I think people are just starting to talk about the circular economy. So this was our first crack at what it might mean to earn a green dot in circular economy. And you'll see a lot of these things that are listed here are not certifications. They're things about our responsibility as designers. Like, are we choosing materials that are a single component rather than something that's fusing aluminum to plastic to wood and then can never actually be deconstructed? But are we putting it into the building with mechanical fasteners instead of glue? Like, there's a lot to bite onto here, and this is imperfect, I gotta admit, but it was the starting point, and that was the point. And then looking out at the product disclosures that are out there in the marketplace right now, what are starting to get at some of these areas of the pledge? So you'll see those icons again coming into play here. And there's pros and cons to all of these disclosures and certifications, but there's some of the best ones out there at the moment to help us get at these areas of the materials pledge. And so I keep talking about this, the green dot criteria being imperfect. And what I mean by that is, like, the manufacturers are not going to make the change just because ZGF, we're a little over 700 people, is asking what would be bigger, what would be better is for the industry at large to come together, including the manufacturers, including contractors, including architects and designers, all coming together and saying, what should the ask be? How can we simplify the ask? So instead of ZGF having a green dot and another firm having their program and another firm having their program, how can we come together to simplify the ask and all make a common ask? So I'm really excited about this work, and I'm really excited that we have this great acronym, the TACO. So within these 5 areas of the materials pledge, the work that we're doing right now, we're looking at what does it mean to be transparent? What does assessment mean? What are commitments that you could have within that area of the pledge? And what does optimization mean? So I think that this, the TACO makes it seem simple. There's a lot of hard work behind it. But I think, coming together and making that ask and make it easier for all of us. I hope to retire the ZGF Green Dot program or to point to the common materials framework sometime soon, so that we can be part of a bigger, simpler ask. Thank you.
Every time we do, well, we haven't really done this presentation together, but every time we talk about all these tacos, I get really hungry for tacos. So we missed Taco Tuesday. So next week, I guess. So wow. Thank you both. That was awesome to see the work, and Matt, amazing statistics that you just threw out there. And it's just really incredible to see the journey we've all been on from the LP50 letter to now the AIA Materials pledge, the interior design pledge, now the new manufacturer's commitment, the owner's commitment. It's like really amazing to see the growth of this movement over the past 2 to 3 years and the momentum that we're seeing. So thanks to your hard work, and Lana, that was awesome to see your firm really helping to define how an architect and designer is thinking about this. So that in practice, that was really great to see. So thank you. Alex, I think we have some questions in the chat, and are we going to open up to people talking or just chat at this point in time?
That's a good question. I'm open to whatever people want to do. I mean, I think I can kind of kick off by reading 1 or 2 of the questions, and then perhaps after that, people might be able to jump on with questions. So Sarah Packer had asked, at the Center for Environmental Health, we often hear from designers, not surprisingly, that it's challenging to encourage their clients to select safer materials, particularly when there's a cost differential compared to conventional products. Do firms that sign the AIA pledge get support in making the case for safer products with their clients? So perhaps Matt or Lana might be able to take that.
Yeah, it's definitely something we hear. We hear on all of our sustainability resilience programs. It's this idea of like cost is not unique to the materials sector, I would say, but we don't have many sort of specific resources right now that get at that ROI question or the cost differential, but we do have some, and it's definitely a place where AIA has been making more investments. One product I would point folks to is the return on investment of high performance buildings research project we've done with the University of Washington. That's on AIA.org's website. It doesn't necessarily get into materials, but it does start to look at co-benefits. There is a bit of a theory, right, around education and how you can persuade the client, and sometimes having better talking points and evidence-based data is helpful in that journey, sort of absent some of the market drivers. We've also looked at and are considering opportunities around research to get better into that space and understand those differences. Nothing committed right now, but definitely something on the horizon. And then I also point just to resources like the Healthier Materials Protocol, which is a document AIA developed with ARUP a couple of years back. It's a great resource. And again, it's a good way of saying, how are you defining what constitutes that healthy product and building a protocol to deliver it within your project. And I think that's a really great attribute. You know, architects and designers have a lot of agency in the materials they specify. Certainly we're beholden to clients, right? Not saying that these operate in vacuums, and we specify materials that exist. And so we are part of that ecosystem together. But I think to Annie's sort of early comment, we are seeing transformation in what the market is asking for, in the savviness of consumers, including our end users and our clients. And I'm optimistic that the collaborative work we're doing together will keep pushing us forward and make put us in a position where in a year and a half, 2 years, we have a better answer to that question. But I'd welcome Lana and Annie if there's anything additional you would add.
I think the AIA Materials Pledge Starter Kit is a great place to look at. And I would just say that you don't need to reinvent it. The reasons that we care about these materials issues are going to be the same reasons our clients care about these materials issues. So there's a lot of resources within the AIA Materials Pledge Starter Kit. And some of my favorites right now, Green Science Policy Institute 6 classes has these great little videos about certain chemicals of concern or classes of chemicals of concern. They're only about 6 minutes long, and they're very easy to take in. They're targeted at lay people. And in that same vein, Healthy Building Networks has the Home Free website, which does stoplight rankings of products by type. So it never names manufacturers within it. It just says, you know, within the flooring category, we give linoleum a green, and we give these other products a yellow or a red. Product types, a yellow or red. And of course, the Carbon Leadership Forum is another place to look. EC3 is a great tool to start navigating the wonderful world of climate, health, and materials.
Thanks, Lana and Matt. And I noted in the chat that I'm keeping track of the resources that we're referring to here so that we can distribute those in an email afterwards. There was an earlier question that perhaps Annie or Lana want to speak to, kind of two pieces around how is mindful materials defining circularity, and additionally, what's the status of the social health and equity bucket? And Annie, I know you provided sort of a brief answer to that, but maybe you could just kind of talk a little more about the process there.
Yeah, so thanks, Alex. We have embarked on this journey of collaborative definitions of these buckets. And I was originally thinking by the end of 2022, we will have all 5 buckets defined. And then we dove into human health and realized the significant amount of work that has been done to date in the industry surrounding human health, but it was quite the effort to define TACO across the 3 sub-level buckets: substances, VOCs, and company-wide human health impact. And so ultimately, we have a time frame to still finish all of the definitions and data and science definitions behind these 5 buckets. But we are on a time frame of when we feel like the quality is complete, and we are exhausted of looking on a global basis of what could be enabling that definition. And so we have now finished a very preliminary first draft of the human health bucket that's going to the content working group actually today. And then we are going to be advancing to climate health that we believe will be quick because it's addressing embodied carbon in products and company-wide carbon, which has been relatively defined by other resources across the world. Then we will be sorting out circularity, and that will be interesting because of what Matt mentioned in his statistics. Boy, there hasn't been a lot of focus here. How do we think about this? How do we define it? What programs exist to actually think about circular products? And how does a manufacturer talk about it and prove that they actually have end-of-life recycling capabilities in the current infrastructures based on where they are in the world? So it's obviously complicated to think on a global structure. From there, we'll tackle social health and equity. And then finally, ecosystem health. Ecosystem health is probably the area that needs the most solidification on what does that really mean? What are we thinking about when it comes to the ecosystem of the impact of the built environment? And so we're thinking of tackling that in early February 2022. So from now till February, we'll be hard at work defining these things, but that's sort of the timeline and why I can't immediately speak to these definitions off the cuff, because there's more work to be done in developing this common materials framework. Lana, I don't know if you have anything to add there, just based on your role in the CAB as well.
I would just add that you named the two hardest categories theoretically, but that part of the work that we're doing at the Common Materials Framework, and we already ran into a little bit of this with the health category, is identifying some of the holes. Where is the marketplace not giving us the right information to make better decisions within this category? So I think those two are going to be some places where we're identifying what some of those holes are, but also pointing to the best things that are out in the marketplace right now, honestly, which, architects and designers like me may not even know about yet, haven't been getting all the press and buzz that some of the other tools out there are getting. So lots of work to be done.
One last thing on that, I totally agree. Groups like Health Product Declaration Collaborative are doing additional work to define the nitty-gritty data, the nitty-gritty science. Why do we care about 1,000 parts million level or 100 parts million level? HPDC actually organized a harmonization group that defined those levels that matter. So we will be looking at the working groups across the industry defining these things. USGBC has numerous pilot credit committees that are developing some of these definitions. So we're looking at the leading edge, what is currently in progress, and continuing to evolve those definitions to really hone this common materials framework. So it is a pretty large net that we're casting to bring all this information in.
Thanks, everyone. Yeah. And I would also just add that, we can send out more resources about this, but if anybody who's here is like, I am dug in on this particular category and I want to nerd out on this with mindful materials, I think that's really what we're looking for, is how do we sort of bring more people in to be solving these challenges together. There will never be a perfect anything, a perfect product certification, a perfect product specification platform, or even a perfect framework. But I think because there's so many complexities of it, and even one particular category is so tied into others, as Annie was kind of referring to. But I think what's really exciting is that as a group, if we can kind of come together and start to speak the same language and start to move in the same direction, I mean, the capacity for change is enormous through just this alignment. And so we would encourage anybody who is interested in contributing to sort of join the mindful materials community, and start contributing to, how we're thinking about these things and promoting this approach. We have about 3 minutes. Are there any other questions from anyone out there? You can either put them in the chat, or it's 3 minutes. You could also speak up if you want to. Or I guess you can't actually speak up because I would have to unmute you. I lied. I turned off everyone's mics. But if there are no further questions for now, we can wrap up. As I said, I'm gonna send a summary and the recording. I'm not sure about sending out the slides. That's usually a bit tricky from organization to organization, but definitely the recording of this. So please, if you missed some of it, watch it, share it with other people. Lana, what is your cat's name? Oh, there is a cat right there. Sophie. Nice. This is the burning question that everybody wanted to know today. Yeah. But thank you all so much for joining. We're excited to sort of put on more of these and start to talk about how everyone in the industry is building this common materials framework and a roadmap towards a future where mindful materials are the norm, not the exception. So thank you all so much. We really appreciate it. If we don't see y'all before the holidays, everybody have a good break, go rest up, and we'll be ready to tackle new things next year.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.